you also wrote a column for VSiN earlier this morning as well, and this is highlighting players who need to step up in 2022 to help out their teams. Why don't you give the folks a little bit of an appetizer of what you wrote this morning?
Well, I think, we focus so much, Femi, on we got to get this player better. This rookie coming in, he's really going to make a difference in our football team. And we've got to get this guy who we signed as a free agent really has to step up. When yet in reality, if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, right? If you're the Chiefs and you're sitting there and all the Chief fans are talking about is they're worried about who's going to replace Tyreek Hill. Mm-hmm. Well, the reality of it really is it comes down to simply this. Patrick Mahomes has to play better. Nobody talks about it, but Patrick Mahomes has to. If you look at Patrick Mahomes' numbers from last year compared to 2018, 2019, it's a huge decline. Now, you could say, well, a lot of it's the offensive line. No, it's not. No, it's not. If you really study it, it's a lot of it is his fundamentals, his techniques, his decision-making. He would be the first, I think, to admit to anybody he didn't play well. Mm-hmm. And that level of play, like if you're the GM of the Chiefs or Andy Reid, you got to get him to play better. You got to get him to play to a level. Lamar Jackson, you got to get him to play to a level. Tannehill's numbers from 2 years ago to last year, understanding Derrick Henry wasn't playing, are significantly declining. And the same thing with Russell Wilson, who we talked about. So to me, all this conversation about hope and enthusiasm with all these new players, when in reality, you got to get your older players, your best players to play their best.
Yeah, Mahomes was really up and down last season there. He played great in that AFC divisional game against the Bills and then played great in the first half against the Bengals, then all of a sudden short-circuited in the second half and in overtime there. I didn't even recognize the guy who was behind center for the Chiefs against the Bengals there in the second half and OT.
I mean, like you go back to the 4-interception game against the Chargers earlier in the year. Yeah. I mean, like he was bad. He was bad for a while. Now everybody makes excuses for him. And look, do I think he turns it around? Absolutely. I don't doubt it. But let's call a spade here. Like he wasn't good. He was as much part of the reason why they didn't go to the Super Bowl as anybody. Those 3 passes in overtime against the Bengals are probably 3 of the worst passes I've ever seen in my life by a pro quarterback.
He was begging for them to intercept the ball, and they finally did on that third down deep shot there that he tried to fit into Tyreek Hill in double coverage. Just not a good second half or overtime for Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship game. I am just fascinated to see what the next step is for this Chiefs offense. No more Tyreek Hill. Patrick Mahomes, you mentioned it, he's got to play better in 2022. The division is a lot more difficult. The team that's overlooked is the Raiders. They were in the playoffs as well. Everybody loves the Chargers. Everybody loves the Broncos. There's no cakewalk on the schedule here for the Chiefs outside of maybe 1 or 2 games. And with that being said, under 10.5, that's kind of how I'm looking at that. Am I going on a fool's errand here, or am I onto something?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to Mahomes. Can he play to the level that he did a couple years ago? The year, when they won in 19, those numbers are sensational. And if he turns the ball over like he did, I mean, look, they're not going to get played the same way that they were played with Tyreek Hill. We know that they're going to be played differently. Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I mean, when you look at his ratio to targets and catches, is not very good. He's like a Dave Kingman. Remember Dave Kingman? It was either a home run or 5 strikeouts. So. But I think defensively, I think that's always the concern when I look at the Chiefs. I worry about them, especially early in the year. Can they get it organized? And without Mathau back there to really lead that secondary, to get them in the right calls, to make the things that they need to do, Justin Reed's going to have to, Thornhill, who's doing this, right? Who's going to make the play? They drafted a Cook kid in the second round. Is he coming in to do that? Yeah. I'm a little bit worried. Plus, I agree with you. The level of comp's always harder. And, look, let's face it. I mean, Kelce's, this will be Kelce going into his 10th year. They miss any of these players for a little bit of time, it's going to be problematic.
Yeah, Kelce, he's not getting any younger there, and we'll see what happens as he's going to be the guy that's going to have to carry this passing attack outside of Patrick Mahomes. Kelce, quick side note here, because I saw a prompt on Twitter earlier this week, and it was, which player that is great were you on before everybody else was on? And I remember watching in 2013, I was just keeping tabs on the draft, and Travis Kelce was a guy that I really wanted the Dallas Cowboys to draft because they needed a tight end at the time. They're like, okay, Witten's getting up there in age. We'll see what they do. They end up drafting Gavin Escobar in the second round. That didn't work out. Travis Kelce goes to the Chiefs in the 3rd round, and a Hall of Fame career later, here we are with Travis Kelce. But that was a guy that if Jerry Jones had just listened to me, even though he doesn't have my contact info, Travis Kelce could have been a Dallas Cowboy.
You know, it's funny. There was a lot of character issues about Kelce coming out. There was some stuff that obviously proved not to be true, that wasn't true, that was being rumored about, which kills a lot of guys. I think in doing this project for the book, Femi, it happened in that. I mean, there was a Pittsburgh newspaper that killed Marino, a suburban newspaper that put rumors out on Marino that hurt his stock and moved him down. I mean, going into the draft in '83, it was who's going to be one, Marino or Elway. Meanwhile, when the draft finally happened, Marino was 28th, Elway was 1. I mean, he dropped that far because of these alleged rumors. So misinformation can hurt a player. But I think more than anything, I think what Kelce has done is redefined, it kind of changed the position a little bit. Kelce's not a true F, a tight end. He's not a Y. He's an F. And he's a big receiver that runs really good routes. And had he not gone with Andy, could he have been as effective? Probably. But Andy's really good at figuring out how to develop from within. I think he made his career. I think a lot of the Hall of Fame, you talk about where the guy went and did the coach really benefit himself with what he did with them. And I think certainly Kelce benefited from going with Andy. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and Andy Reid was comfortable taking him because he had coached Jason Kelce in Philadelphia there, so he had a relationship with the family.
He knew.
Yeah,
he knew him. I mean, the same thing. Look, they took the biggest risk of all in Tyreek Hill. Nobody was taking, other than the Raiders. There was no teams, and none of the teams should have, based on if you did any homework or due diligence based on what happened at Oklahoma State. You can't. But they did, and they were able to. I remember talking to somebody after they made the pick. I'm like, how could you pick that guy? I mean, the guy was great at Oklahoma State. Like, that was not a sleeper, as many people allege it to be.
No,
the guy was great at Oklahoma. Yeah, there was sincere, proven reasons, and yet they did. Well, we did our homework. Well, we all did our homework. You just reached a different conclusion. That's all.
Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.